Your life, your country. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Podcast.
Another slow news cycle as we peel back the onion on big issues facing America, our culture, our political system. No holds barred. You're going to get the real scoop here, not the headlines, not the usual bluster from those we have seen pop in and out of television shows. And oh my gosh, the level of sheer ignorance when it comes to two big issues that we're going to get into today. The level of ignorance peddled by members of the Trump opposition party and their collaborators in the media. Willful ignorance in some cases. And, of course, just rank bias and partisanship mixed in for good measure. But let's start first with the Mueller report, because this is now just a point of complete and utter embarrassment for Democrats. You know the old saying, and you're in a hole, don't keep digging. But apparently, not only are they continuing to dig, but they're getting a backhoe to dig even deeper and faster. Because they try to paint this scenario where Mueller's true intention and true conclusions were being skewed by Bill Barr, who is esteemed international legal intellect, by the way. Now, a former attorney general under H.W. Bush, and then went on to be one of the top CEOs in the world in telecom. And then came back and just, not because do you think he needs this grief? I keep thinking of all the people who are doing these jobs in the administration. Do you think they would need this grief at this point in their lives? I'm thinking of people like Bob Lighthizer, who's age 73, 72, who's phenomenal. Perhaps the best U.S. trade representative I've ever had. I think of people like Wilbur Ross. I think of people like, of course, in this case, Bill Barr. And Bill Barr has grandkids. I mean, he's done really well. He doesn't need this garbage thrown at him from the bleachers day in and day out, but he's doing it. And you know why he's doing it? He's doing it for the good of the country. This is true public service. You think this is fun? I mean, really, do you think this is fun for these people day in and day out to be vilified? Alex Azar, I'll throw him in at HHS. Alex Azar is one of the top executives of one of the biggest companies in the world. Okay? He's one of the top lawyers in America. Alex Azar decides he was already deputy HHS secretary years earlier under Bush. Do you think he needed to come in and be in this cabinet? I mean, honestly, do you really think that's what he needed? Of course he didn't. I'll throw in Jared Kushner and Ivanka. You don't think they had a really great life in Manhattan where they weren't called racist, where they weren't called xenophobes, where they weren't called, this is all the products of pure nepotism. Do you think any of these people didn't have an easier, more fun life before this? But they did it because they knew the country needed it. Doesn't mean they're perfect. Doesn't mean they won't make mistakes. But, I was just thinking about that today with the grief that these people get, especially now Bill Barr, because he's testifying on Capitol Hill. This is now a couple of weeks after we find out Mueller could not find collusion. 2 years, $30 million, no collusion with Russia. Trump didn't work with the Russians to try to skew the election. Trump wasn't working to try to release emails. Trump made offhand comments in public about, oh, you want to release Hillary's emails? Go ahead. Obviously, this is Trump. The idea that Trump was ever figuring out a way to meet with Putin's agents to try to win Ohio was one of the more ridiculous things ever proffered in the public domain. Ever proffered. Yet they hung their hopes on this. They called him a traitor. They called him a dictator. They said he was in bed with the autocrats. He was one himself. They said he was someone who was guilty of sedition. You could be hung for sedition. This is what they said about this president. For 2 years, 2 years later, you would think they would say, time to change course here. Time to figure this out. No. Instead, what they did is they either say, he couldn't really conclude obstruction. No. What he concluded is what a prosecutor concludes is that at the end of 2 years, there is no evidence of obstruction. Now, they wanted to interview Trump. Guess what? There's a little constitutional problem with that. They weren't able to interview Trump. If any lawyer who thought Trump should go talk to Mueller's team, forget it. I mean, that would have been the dumbest thing ever. But so now they're hanging it on obstruction. They're hanging it on, maybe there's going to be details in here that we can cherry pick out of 400 pages, and we can throw up the sand and try to get it in Trump's eyes once again. Throw the sand at him and see if he blinks. This is all they have. So Bill Barr goes up and testifies on Capitol Hill. Now, we're going to go through these sound bites in succession. And think about this. Think about what they've said about Bill Barr, that he's Trump's hand-picked attorney general, compared to what? Did they want Nancy Pelosi to pick Trump's attorney general? Don't you love that? The hand-picked attorney, Trump's hand-picked henchman. Okay, so now you know everything they've said, like the Eric Swalwell, the Adam Schiff types, the MSNBC types, Maddow, Lawrence, and all these people said all the things they said about this Bill Barr. Now listen to Bill Barr.
Did you use any of the summary documents prepared by the special counsel in drafting these documents?
On the letter of the 24th, Mr. Mueller's team did not play a role in drafting that document, although we offered him the opportunity to review it before we sent it out, and he declined that.
Ruh-roh. I think of Astro and the Jetsons. Ruh-roh. Well, okay, did you get that? Jerry Nadler is trying to, what really happened? Well, they didn't see it, but we offered Mueller's team the chance to read the whole thing. And they declined. Now, why do you think Mueller's team declined? I always like going the why, the motivation. They knew they came up with goose eggs. They know they have goose eggs. It's almost like adding insult to injury then to have to read Barr's report. No, you file it. No. Or the other explanation could be it gives them the chance to grouse to the media off the record about how they didn't get it right. We'll see if they saw it and it came out, then they're kind of in a real pickle, because then what did the Mueller team go say? Well, we did see it. We okayed it. It's not for them to okay. They give, the way the law works, they write the report, they give it to Barr. Okay? The report then has to be scrubbed for classified information, grand jury materials. That's law. Okay? Law. L-A-W. That's the law. Barr is in the process of scrubbing of classified information and grand jury materials. You can't release grand jury materials lest you become a felon yourself. Okay? So that's the way that goes. Mueller's team had the chance to review. Mueller's team declined. Now, you know what? When I'm watching Bill Barr testify on Capitol Hill, and I watch these pikers, these utter buffoons in the Democrat Party. I mean, if they had brains, long ago they lost them in Washington. I don't know what happened to their brains, because obviously they're not all dumb people. But they hate Trump so much, they just leave all common sense in the back seat. You know, when people are obsessed with other people, I mean, really obsessed. And, you've seen maybe you've experienced this in relationships where people become obsessed with you, or maybe when you were a kid, you're younger, you become obsessed. It's sometimes puppy love, or it's an unhealthy relationship. Well, you lose all sense of, oh my God, I've just called her 15 times in an hour. I keep texting her even though she doesn't respond. But no, a normal person would think, maybe it's time to stop. Maybe it's time to go on with my life. Leave that fool behind and go on with your life. Start taking the mountains. That's what a norm. But when you're obsessed, it's all out the window. You're obsessed. You can't think straight.
I want to address a serious oversight matter. Your unacceptable handling of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report.
Speaking of dumb.
It's been reported that the report is 300 to 400 pages. And I use the term reported because we have no idea how long it actually is.
Ooh.
All we have is your 4-page summary, which seems to cherry pick from the report.
How do you know? You haven't seen the report.
To draw the most favorable conclusion possible for the president.
This is good. Okay. She is internally contradictory in her own statement there. She says, we haven't seen the report. We hear it's 300 to 400 pages long, meaning someone leaked that out. And then says, well, you've cherry-picked the report. Okay, buffoon. This is what a summary is. You summarize. You can't put all 300 or 400 pages in. Oh, my God, these people are so yeah, right. It's a summary. You know what I keep thinking? There are people who actually go and vote for her in New York. People actually go into the voting booth and they hit that touch screen for Nita Lowey. Now, when they're doing that, have they actually heard her speak? Have they actually seen her record for the great state of New York? This is, and they're upset, by the way, that Trump fires people. Okay. Oh, Trump, the purge at DHS. I love that they're using the phrase of Mao and Stalin. Purge. It's called cleaning house. You know, the House of Representatives should be cleaned out too. I'd clean this whole thing out. The purge. We're going to get into that later. The purge at DHS. It's called, we have a crisis at the border. We need people in there who can use the agency authority to do everything that is absolutely necessary to stem the crisis. All common sense flies out the window when these people are so obsessed with Trump, hating on Trump, and their entire life's mission has become resisting Trump. I don't know what they're going to do when he's gone. Honestly, when he ultimately is gone out of office, whenever that is, I don't know what they're going to do. When you haven't developed your own life and you developed your own interests or maybe a set of really close friends, like, well, you find yourself, wait, what's my life all? This is really the meaning of their life now. Trump's trying to get the stuff done with China. He wants the USMCA finally passed by Congress. Nancy Pelosi is a scandal on the USMCA, the new NAFTA. Scandal. She doesn't want to even give the president that. So he's doing all this stuff. All they can do is resist. That's their entire life mission. Again, at some point he will be gone. Then you're going to have to figure out what you actually stand for. I want to thank all of our great sponsors, by the way. Genucel, Delta Animal Rescue, Sero Vital, Legacy Box, and Brush Hero. Oh my gosh, these are so awesome. They help provide this podcast free to you many times a week. You love the podcast. You're telling all your friends about it. You're subscribing. Go to Podcast One. Very easy to do. But these products make it possible. And a lot of other great sponsors as well. But these are just awesome people, great products. We'll get into more of this later on in the show. Bill Barr was, again, the wolves have their teeth bared, and they're rabid wolves surrounding him. He kind of exhales on every answer.
This process is going along very well, and my original timetable of being able to release this by mid-April stands. And so I think that from my standpoint, within a week, I will be in a position to release the report to the public, and then I will engage with the chairman of both judiciary committees about that report and about any further requests that they have.
He sounds really out of control, doesn't he? Doesn't he sound like he's a man not in possession of his faculties and not doing a professional job? It's a thankless job. What he's doing is thankless. The Republicans want Mueller's team to be ground into the dirt, but Bill Barr is just going about this as he's supposed to under law, under the rule of law. By the way, this is a DOJ budget hearing. Sounds like they're talking about a lot of the budget priorities, right? Well, I'd love to go through that $30 million that was wasted by the Mueller team. Go through that budget. By the way, the other issues that, of course, impact the department greatly include the border crisis. Again, a crisis that Congress does not address. Before we get into that, isn't that just amazing? You put politics aside. Obama in 2006 sounded like Donald Trump now.
We are a generous and welcoming people here in the United States, but those who enter the country illegally and those who employ them disrespect the rule of law, and they are showing disregard for those who are following the law. We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked, and circumventing the line of people who are waiting patiently, diligently, and lawfully.
You know what I would do if I were Trump or anyone in Trump's team? I would quote Obama every single. Thank you for asking that, Jim Acosta, because I just want to quote an esteemed American on this issue. I would quote Obama 5 times a day. Just keep. As President Obama said in 2006, as Dianne Feinstein said in 1998. As Hillary Clinton said in 2003, whatever, I would just keep doing that. I would quote all the Democrats all day long because it's worse now. So if they believe that then, why do they not want to do something about it now? By the way, I talked to a senior official in the White House last night. And the estimate that you're seeing bandied about online today, that it could be 100,000 people apprehended. Those are just apprehended. The estimate is that there are 3 times that many, actually, people get through. Is not 100,000 in the month of March. Excuse me, they're projecting month of April. It's 150,000. Wow. Well, but of course, why wouldn't they come in? They know they come in. They claim this credible fear. And then in 7 to 14 days, because of some idiot district court judge in California, they have to be released. Again, if Congress actually cared about the country, they would immediately change the law. You must claim asylum in the first country in which you land, Mexico, and you must stay there until your asylum claim is heard. Then you can come into the country, and when after that hearing, you either get to stay or you have to go back to your home country or go back to the first country you're supposed to claim asylum. But the fraud of this is that the millions of people who are set to come here and already have come here could have claimed asylum in Mexico. Mexico has already actually given asylum to some 100,000s of people. Most of them they're economic migrants. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But Barr touched on the border crisis.
The problem we face on our southern border is really unprecedented. Not just the volume and the makeup of the people coming across from an immigration policy standpoint, but by the strength of the criminal organizations in Mexico. One of the things that has changed a lot in the 30 years prior, when I was Attorney General, has been the strengthening of these criminal organizations in Mexico, these cartels that are not only involved in multiple kinds of drugs and the transportation of those drugs and distribution in the United States, but also into human trafficking. So attacking those transnational criminal organizations is a high priority.
Yeah, well, this is what a serious person sounds like. By the way, I want to thank our great friends at Legacy Box for helping simplify the Ingraham household's boxes and boxes of our photographs and our VHS tapes. Oh, my goodness. It is a miracle. You have everything that you've wanted to do to get your life in order when it comes to photos or audio tapes, VHS tapes, excuse me. And they're just, it's like an anvil around your neck. You know you have to do it. You want to preserve these memories for your children or yourself, your family members. You want to share easily these old photos with your family members, and you just never get to it. Well, guess what? They will do it for you. Send your Legacy Box kit, which you just go to legacybox.com. They send you a kit filled with all your old home movies, camcorder tapes, pictures, and they will do the rest. And they'll digitize your moments onto a thumb drive, a digital download, or a DVD. It's that easy, and it's like magic. Now, and with Legacy Box, you can digitize all your old family memories and become the family hero. There's never been a better time to do this either, my friends. Just go to legacybox.com and you get started. You just go to legacybox.com/Laura. If you add the /Laura, you get 40% off your first order. Again, legacybox.com/Laura. Save 40% today. So get started preserving your past. Do not put this off. legacybox.com/Laura. Joining us now to give us a real sense of what this country is facing, Art Arthur, resident fellow in law and policy for the Center for Immigration Studies, former immigration judge, then ICE, INS it was called, Immigration Naturalization Service, then it became Immigration Customs Enforcement, and Art joins us now. Art, every time we come on, you come on with us, we say, well, it's gotten worse. And now the projection that I got from a senior White House official last night was that April could actually be 150,000 people. Your thoughts?
It wouldn't surprise me a bit that it would be 150,000 people because, quite frankly, if you want to enter the United States illegally, we now have the perfect system by which you can do so. All you have to do is grab a kid, come to the United States, and, thanks to the Ninth Circuit, you're going to be released within 20 days, and you can live in the United States for 8 years waiting for your case to happen. And then after that, you can just ignore the order and stay here indefinitely.
I did some digging yesterday into this, quote, credible fear screening that individuals get when they come into the United States claiming asylee status. So they are all coached, or almost all coached, by lawyers who volunteer, members of Open Borders, NGOs, fly down to these various areas in Mexico, or they're coached in their home countries, in Central America or Mexico, but mostly Central America. And they recite that they live in fear of their lives for a variety of reasons. Now, I am told that there are actual things that the agency can do to deny credible fear when it's claimed. Right now, 90% or so of people are granted that they just waived in. So once they get the credible fear screening, they say credible fear, then they can stay in the country and they're released. But I understand that the guy who's the head of the UCIS, Cisna, that he actually could be doing more. I know he's someone that your organization likes, but as far as I can discern it from the regs and the agency latitude, there was a lot more, and there is a lot more you could do just at that level. Am I correct in stating that?
Well, there are definitely things that the government as a whole can do that would...
No, I'm talking about just the agency, just DHS. There's obviously a house cleaning mode that we're in right now at DHS, but it's one thing being able to say, like I do every day, okay, we want to tighten up the credible fear screening. It's another thing having the stones to actually do it and then get all the criticism and the lawsuits and everything else that would follow. That's my point. I mean, Steve Bannon, we love Steve Bannon, but the first 100 days were obviously rocky for the administration for a variety of reasons. So it's being a true believer versus a real implementer. That's my point. Now, I'm sorry, I'm talking too long here, but go ahead.
The USCIS right now is bound by the rules under which they're operating. Part of them are statutory because the credible fear standard, as you know, is extremely low. And, part of it is, goes back to 1999 when the Department of Justice and the Executive Office for Immigration Review was given jurisdiction over torture convention claims. So even if you show up at the border and you wouldn't satisfy the asylum standard, the asylum officers still must find that you have a credible fear of torture if you assert that you would be subject to harm if sent back to your country, because the asylum officer doesn't have the jurisdiction to make that torture assessment.
I understand that what can be done is unless the State Department has deemed a particular sector of a particular country dangerous to the extent that there is no local protection. In other words, like say, well, we know the sheriff in Sector X or Town X they're actually doing a lot to stop gang violence. That there is actually a lot. So, in other words, the State Department and DHS working hand in hand on this stuff can actually do a lot.
Yeah,
so, in other words, a lot of the credible fear stuff is that's just total bunk. I mean, they're just being coached.
Exactly. And the State Department traditionally did profiles of asylum claims. They stopped doing them in the Obama administration, and they were very helpful to making your way through these, to eliminating these bad claims. But they stopped doing it, and for some reason they haven't started doing it again.
So they could do that. What my point is, I'm looking for solutions today. So the State Department could declare that Guatemala has sufficient resources and personnel to protect their own people from ongoing torture claims or ongoing gang violence, correct?
Yeah, State Department could do that, and I have called upon State Department probably over a year ago to go ahead and do that, but they haven't. They have the personnel on the ground in those countries. They know what's going on in those countries, and they can actually put out an authoritative opinion that the judge, that the asylum officer could use in adjudicating those claims. But they haven't done it, and I don't know why they haven't done it. They have the resources, but they haven't done it.
Mm-hmm. So, go ahead.
The Department of Justice could state that the bars to asylum apply in the credible fear process. Again, the Department of Justice hasn't done that. So USCIS is, sort of faced with the situation where they don't have sufficient information to adjudicate these claims, where they don't have the sufficient authority to actually deny the claim, and they are very much faced with limited resources because they're completely fee-based. So they only have a limited number of asylum officers to adjudicate these claims. I don't let anybody off the hook, but of all the actors in this play, USCIS is probably the one who, because they are, in essence, the grease trap of this process, they're stuck with all the bad, with all the non-action that's occurred above.
So I'm just looking at the credible fear screening information on USCIS, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. And so again, just so people understand, what you're saying is that there is no way an asylum officer can say no to a credible fear. If someone says, I believe I face a significant possibility that I have a credible fear of persecution or torture, then you can't question that. Then they can't question it and they can't say no. See, I don't think that's right. I don't mean to question you. You're the former judge, but to me, that seems like you've already been in Mexico where you had the ability to claim asylum. So to me, that is the first strike against you. Did you claim asylum in Mexico and were you denied? Yes or no? I mean, that's according to the regs. They can do that according to these regs, correct?
According to the Attorney General's, then Attorney General Sessions' decision in matter of AB, and this goes back to old case law, the immigration judges can make that determination as a matter of discretion. But as a matter of law, that's not a bar to you receiving asylum, unfortunately. Again, Congress could act and say, if you went to a country that grants asylum, and Mexican asylum law, as you know, is actually much broader than U.S. asylum law, they could do that, but they haven't done that. And so the fact that somebody hasn't applied in any country they went through, be it Guatemala or Honduras or Mexico, all of which grant asylum, that's not a bar to being found to have a credible fear. And again, there's nothing the asylum officers can do in that particular instance. The amazing thing is that they deny 10% or 24%, depending on how you want to add up the numbers, of these claims. Not the fact that they end up granting 76 to 90% of them.
I don't know. It seems like there's got to be more that you can do in the agency. I got to keep looking into this because it simply doesn't make sense on its face that someone just comes into the country and says, and they have a script and they say, I fear torture or persecution in my home country.
And again, remember, going back to the original statute itself and the original reason for the statute, it was intended to get people out of the United States more quickly, not be a pathway to enter the United States. But
Explain that again, just so people understand. I get it. But
if you show up and you enter illegally, you're subject to expedited removal.
Right.
Expedited removal, Congress said in 1996, means you don't have to appear before an immigration judge. DHS can just simply remove you from the United States without you ever going to court. But there was an exception in it for the credible fear in order to comply with international statutes. So what we traditionally did was we detained people who had claimed credible fear pending, the judge actually hearing their asylum claim. And in fact, that's what the credible fear standard or that's what the credible fear provision in the INA says. But because of a lack of space, because Obama began releasing individuals who had been found to have positive credible fear claims, we went from 5,000 claims to 94,000 claims. I think it was actually 97,000 claims last year. People know that if they claim credible fear and are found to have credible fear, they're going to be released. So that's what's led to this huge increase, was a decision by the Obama administration to release individuals who had been found to have credible fear, notwithstanding the fact that the statute says that they're not to be released. Well, we're now at a point, Laura, where we just don't have the space anymore to hold all of the people who have been found to have positive credible fear claims, one. And two, as you know, thanks to the Flores settlement agreement, as interpreted by the Ninth Circuit in 2016, kids have to be released within 20 days because we don't separate families. That means that the adult who accompanies them gets released too. And that is a completely judicial created exception that has swallowed the expedited removal rule.
But can you be removed in an expedited fashion if you're from another country? I thought because of that stupid Dianne Feinstein, William Wilberforce Trafficking Act, that you can't send back to non-contiguous countries. I know we're getting way in the weeds here. That only applies to unaccompanied
alien children, not to family units. And by definition, if you have a parent who's able to care for you in the United States, you're not an unaccompanied alien child. We still have a problem with unaccompanied alien children, but when you're talking about the vast majority of these people who are family units, they're using the Flores exception to come into the United States.
I got it. So just so people understand, because I think I was confused about this, and it's people study this area of the law for years to understand it. It's so ridiculous. So if you're a quote family unit, it's an adult with a child, and you claim they're your family member, you come into the country from Guatemala. Right now, you come in across the border. If you do not claim, I want asylum, I have a credible fear of persecution in my home country, if you just cross the border and you don't recite the script, you can be deported, and you will be deported immediately, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. But that's why everybody says credible fear, because then they're just released into the country. Okay. So, of course, it's a perfect system for flooding the country with illegal immigrants. The perfect system we have in place.
It is the perfect system, but again, go back to where it came from. The Obama administration's decision to release these individuals meant that we were going to get more individuals who were going to claim it. The 2016 decision from the Ninth Circuit about accompanied alien children meant that we ended up having to release them because we don't want to separate families. We end up releasing the families, and thus we just get more people coming into the United States. Even if we wanted to put the detention genie back in the bottle, we couldn't at this point because Flores, and we lack the space because we have so many people who are taking advantage of the system.
I also heard yesterday, we're talking to Art Arthur, former immigration judge. I also heard yesterday that the Trump administration doesn't have to abide by Flores.
If the Trump administration doesn't abide by Flores, then any administrative officer or any executive branch officer that doesn't runs the risk of being found in contempt by the court. And having been a former government employee, I don't want to be found in contempt. I don't want to spend the weekend in jail. I don't want to spend the week in jail, and I don't want to have the mark on my record. So again,
what was the argument? Is that Flores is now it's not this, or the consent decree that followed Flores, that in and of itself has basically doesn't apply now for some reason, or has lapsed.
Well, the DHS has drafted rules that would allow them to basically end most of Flores, except for what was already included in the TVPRA, which you addressed earlier. But those rules are still pending. They were issued in September. You had to have your comments in by the end of November. But from what I understand, there are hundreds of thousands of comments. Big DHS needs to use the resources in order to get those rules out the door. Once they do that, Flores will be over. But as you know, you're bound to find a judge probably in the Northern District of California who is going to enjoin those rules, or perhaps even Dolly G., the judge who has jurisdiction over Flores right now, would enjoin those rules. And so it's going to be up to the Justice Department to fight those cases through court.
Yeah, so remember what happened last July, where that judge won't, Dolly G, I believe it was, wouldn't change the settlement that restricts how long, even if we had the beds, in other words, as Art Arthur said, we don't have the facilities. It's overrun. Yeah, so she said she will not change the settlement. So one federal judge is affecting our entire immigration system. And another case yesterday with another Obama appointee, Ninth Circuit District Court judge, issued an injunction that's going to go into effect in a few days, saying that the Trump administration cannot send people back to Mexico pending their asylum claims. They started doing that about a month ago, and so now another federal judge is completely screwing up, and I believe defying federal law on what the law says about, claiming credible fear in the first country where it's safe.
Yeah, there is. In this particular instance, there's a statutory provision that allows DHS to return a person to a contiguous country pending their removal proceedings. And that was the rule that DHS was following. This is a judge in the Northern District of California, again, San Francisco. The policy itself is actually implemented in San Ysidro, which is in the Southern District of California. But notwithstanding that fact, this judge in the Northern District of California found that he had standing because of the institutional interests of the plaintiffs in that case who represent aliens. So one, it's an extremely broad standing standard, and I don't want to bore anybody in your audience who is not a lawyer, but I mean, that's a big deal. The other thing is it really goes to the implementation of the expedited removal provisions. By law, only the District Court for the District of Columbia has jurisdiction over that. So it shouldn't even be in the Southern District of California. This should be a determination made by a district court judge in the District of Columbia. But notwithstanding that fact, a judge in the Northern District of California took jurisdiction over it and enjoined the policy.
Well, I think, again, going back to the first 100 days of Congress, there were a lot of missed opportunities. They could have handled this immigration issue right in those first 100 days. They should have done it. Instead, it was, we did the Muslim, certain countries were banned from traveling, the travel ban, did that. That got all screwed up, and it ended up being embarrassing. And they didn't deal with this. I mean, you and I have been talking about this for years and years and years, Arthur.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been going on for years and years and years.
And it's time for the government as a whole to actually come up with a holistic policy to address this issue. That's why I have called upon the president to do another emergency declaration to implement the land mass migration plan, which we have and which we're able to do in order to detain these people. Let's flood the system with resources. Let's get people in there. Let's get these claims heard quickly. The good people, the people with the good claims, should be allowed to come into the United States. But we know at the end of the day that the vast majority of these people are denied. They should be returned in a timely manner. The Justice Department has to fight the Flores interpretation that it has right now. That's up to them. So there are things that can be done. State Department needs to step up and actually give us the information that the asylum officers or the judges can use. So there you have it.
Yeah, well, it seems to me that right now we have a national emergency on our hands, yet we do not have a political system to address it. That's a stunner. That's a complete stunner. Just in the same Democrats who just a few years back were saying if you cross the border illegally, you're going to have to go home.
Yeah, and you can go through statements that were made in the past. I always go back to Barbara Jordan, who was a civil rights icon, the chairman of the U.S. Commission on Immigration Reform, who said back in 1995, those who should get in, those who should be kept out, and those who are here illegally must be removed, or else people are going to lose faith in the immigration system. And I think that's what you're seeing today. People are losing, the American people are losing faith in the immigration system. There's plainly a crisis at the border that a lot of Democrats denied, most Democrats denied for a period of time. Now they can't deny it anymore, but they're not doing anything to address the problem.
Yeah,
and
well,
they have control of the House.
Well, again, the administration has been thwarted at every turn by these judges, these federal district court judges. Every turn they've been thwarted. When they said you have to apply for asylum at a port of entry, their move was enjoined by a federal court.
Yep.
The moving them to Mexico enjoined by one federal judge. Mm-hmm. So you can forum shop all day long. So this is why Mitch McConnell's got to just wave these people through. Wave these new judges through. Get as many judges on these courts as possible, because we're going to have to win this in the courts. And that means Brett Kavanaugh better do his darn job and stop spooning with John Roberts on the court. I've had about enough of that, too, so that's another issue.
By the way, Barr needs to step up to the plate, too.
Yeah, Bill Barr, 100%. Senator Angus King was on CNN this morning. Let's listen.
He's telling people, to ignore the law. He thinks he can just, run over everybody. And if he doesn't like the law that Congress passed years ago, he can just ignore it or tell his people to ignore it. The wall thing is a perfect example. He didn't get the money that he wanted from a bipartisan Congress, bipartisan appropriations process. So he says, well, the heck with you. I'm going to just run you and do this national emergency. That shreds our Constitution and the democratic system.
It shreds the Constitution and is a democratic system for the president to declare a national emergency. How many national emergencies do we have that were a lot smaller in reach to affecting the country than is the one right now?
And again, Congress has the ability to take away the president's
override
ability but they haven't done it. And, they actually had the opportunity to override the veto. They had the opportunity to actually take away the power, but they don't do it. So, quite frankly, the president is doing what he's allowed to do by law. Senator King just doesn't like it.
Now, Art Arthur, thank you so much for your perspective on this from the Center for Immigration Studies. We really appreciate it. We have a lot more to get to on the Laura Ingraham podcast. And remember, you want to be part of this podcast, just email us at ingram.podcast@gmail.com. That's ingram.podcast@gmail.com. A lot of you know, by the way, how much I love animals. Okay? If I wasn't doing this, I'd be running an animal preserve somewhere. Raymond jokes that I'll be like Doris Day. In my old age, I'll be on a mountaintop somewhere with every manner of animal that's been abused or abandoned. And I could see myself doing that because I'm just an outdoors person, and I love wildlife and nature, and that's probably what I'll end up ending my life doing. That's what I imagine toward the end of my life. But there are people doing this right now, helping animals in need. Delta Animal Rescue, they help our animal friends who are abandoned and lost. And, where do they go? The Delta Rescue is the largest no-kill care for life animal sanctuary of its kind in the world. Now, check this out. It's a super sanctuary, and it's home to more than 1,500 animals that have all been abandoned in the wilderness. Now, you can keep this beautiful mountaintop ranch going, continuing its mission of compassion by including Delta Rescue in your estate plans. Believe me, I've like redone my estate plans and I've redone my will so many times over the years, but this is just one of those great organizations. I know you have a lot of people you want to give to. Maybe it's a small amount of money. Maybe it's $100. Maybe it's $1,000. Maybe it's even more. But this is a great group of people. 100% of your donations go directly to the animals of the Delta Rescue Super Sanctuary. Okay? Now, we can't take it with us. Don't let the government take it. Give your money away at the end of your life to people who are doing good stuff. And this is very easy to do. All you do is go to deltarescue.org, O-R-G. That's deltarescue.org/Laura. And you'll see the benefits of your estate bequest. They're just a wonderful group of people, and they do great work.
What is the program that you would like to see pursued here?
Well, it's a multi-pronged approach that is required. So it is both about reinstituting that aid so we can deal with the long-term effects of the crisis and hopefully mitigate or reduce them. Through aid, we can potentially reduce the reason that they have to flee. There is short-term what we need to do, which is to have a robust approach to processing asylum claims so that we give people a meaningful process by which they can tell their stories and describe the harm they're fleeing.
This is Kamala Harris. So she wants to reinstate aid, and well, what's coming? I promise you, what's coming is a mass amnesty. It's a mass amnesty with guaranteed voters for the Democrat Party. That's what this is. This is heading toward that. I can feel it. The Democrats are going to say, okay, I guess we're going to have to deal with this issue. Now this is what we need. Everybody's crossed the border until yesterday gets to stay. Or a version of that. Unless you've basically axe murdered people, then maybe we'll deport you then. But other than that, they want everyone to stay. And how many people think that the people who've crossed the border last week are going to ever be deported? Never. Never, ever, ever. Just as wages are going up in the country, we have a tight labor market, which is what we want. Just as labor prices are going up, wages are going up for all of you, now they're going to flood the zone. That means you're going to have lower wages again. It's a downward pressure in a lot of industries. And these are industries that traditionally supported families, construction, hospitality. You can make a middle-class life working in those industries. I know because I did. That's how we grew up. It doesn't mean you have everything you want, but guess what? We had a house, we had a roof over our head, we had plenty of food, never wanted for pretty much anything. We didn't go on fancy vacations, but guess what? I worked up to it. Marilyn in Ohio. Marilyn.
Listening to her statement, I want to know when people like me, a retired school teacher whose son is now a drug addict, gets to have her voice heard, because families are being affected by this in multiple ways. As a teacher, I saw our schools plundered with families receiving services, great services, by the way. I'm in a great suburban district where families were receiving the best education possible. They refused to learn English, and so we were given the task. As a kindergarten teacher, of course, that's what I would do. But then families all around me, good people, not just people that are, quote, criminals or from the not good families, all families, everybody's family is affected by the drugs that have been pouring in, and I want my story heard. I have a daughter who's a teacher, like I am, and I have a 30-year-old son who's a drug addict. He's been in a year and a half in recovery, but is still dealing with the aspects of how this will always affect his life.
Awful.
When am I going to be heard? You know,
awful. No, listen, Americans are doing better than ever before because of this economy, but we have a lot of issues we have to deal with. The opioid crisis, the push for pot. I have a question about your son. I was going to say push for pot legalization, and it jogged my thinking here. What did he start using?
He first started using alcohol and pot as a teenager, which a lot of kids do. He was injured in an accident, was put on way too many opioid pills, but then I found out that his generation used those pills for party reasons, and he really became addicted to pain pills. He's 30. He'll be 31 in June.
How long has he been clean?
For a decade.
Yeah, how long has he been sober this time?
A year and a half. I had to force him into drug court. I turned him in on a felony that I knew that he had done so that he could get help and assistance.
Forces him.
Our finances are drained. So, we had no more cash to help, and I don't want to be an enabler, so he has to face the consequences.
Good. Well, it's a heartbreak, but you know something? You got to save yourself. Can't save someone else's drowning if they're drowning you. So you can't do it. But I'm telling you, I'm just going back to the pot thing. I mean, booze is not good either, obviously, but I predict this pot legalization will go down as one of the most outrageously destructive decisions. People are going to become multi-billionaires, as they are. Pot fields, pot businesses, pot infused this, hemp, all the stuff they're making the money off of. And it will suck the life out of our kids. And don't say it's the same as alcohol. It's not the same as alcohol. The increase in psychosis, increase in violent crime in some areas, increase in likelihood that you do go on to the next drug. Don't tell me it's not a gateway when you start young. It is a gateway when you start young. Every single person I know who got caught in the opioid trap started on pot. Every single person I know. Now, there's the rare exception when it was just for pain. You've never had anything in the past. But I'm talking about the young people here. They don't just go to heroin. They don't start with heroin. They start with pot. And because everybody's doing pot. No big deal. Everybody's doing pot. Back to the part we were talking about earlier. And I appreciate the call. Thank you for that call. We got a lot of problems. Driving home from the show last night. Okay. We broadcast on Capitol Hill. And driving home, driving down Constitution Avenue. 3 individuals. First of all, I saw about 10 rats cross the street. Oh my God, it's disgusting. There's so many rats in D.C. And I'm talking about the animal version. I'd say 8 or 10 rats scurrying across the street. And, we were driving. I was like, oh my God, are those cats? No, they're rats. And then about 2 blocks later, 3 men sleeping on a grate. Steam coming up. It's not a cold night. But just back to there shouldn't be an American on the street if we're taking in all these people. Have we solved that problem? Because when we solve that problem, we could just have an open border, I guess, and just roll the dice. We haven't solved that problem. We've got a big, big problem of mental illness, addiction, lots of other problems facing the country that we need as a nation to deal with. We have not dealt with it, and yet we're flooding the country with indigent people, many of whom are illiterate in their own language, and then, of course, have to be brought along in English, courtesy of the U.S. taxpayers. Interpreters in court, English as a second language classes in schools, interpreters in hospitals, and then they look at you and say, what's wrong with you, Americans? Why don't you speak the language? Why don't you speak their language? Well, I do speak their language, and I love Spanish, as you know, and I love Russian. Those are the 2 languages I know. I wish I knew more. I'm working on it. But I don't. That's what the languages I know. But I wouldn't dream of going to another country and demand that and get annoyed when they don't speak my language. That's called the ugly American syndrome, and I never bought into that. When I go to France, which I don't go often, but if I'm in France, I feel embarrassed because I don't speak French. I'm actually embarrassed. I should have learned French. I'm mad at myself for not learning French. But the idea of you're entitled to they have to speak your language. No, you're a guest in their country. But that's not how it is now. It's really incredible. And I say to my producers, and I say to Mike, I'm actually really sad for you that you're not going to see the country that I grew up in. And I'm not a fuddy-duddy. It's like, oh, it all has to be the old. No, I like innovation, change, fine. But it's very sad that you're not going to see the country I grew up in. Because we believe that the melting pot meant something. Like, you came into the country. We love the fact that you bring in foods, and, you know, the Polish have a certain way of doing Christmas, and the Cubans have a certain way of doing their holidays, and it's fun. But there was a sense that this is a good place. We want to preserve our history, our language, our the American understanding. And we're not going to come in here and try to tell you how to do things. And I'm sad that you're never going to see that country.
And it's not just that. It's that we're being told that our country is bad.
It's bad. It's an evil, racist, horrible, awful, rotten country.
Yeah, it's built on genocide and slavery. I hear that from so many young people that's what they get taught in their history courses.
Oh, my
America
God.
is a nation that's founded on slavery and built off the backs of them.
Right. So we have open borders, a welfare state, virtual amnesty, and they come in and they learn to hate America. That's a great recipe for disaster. Christine in Arizona. Christine, this border situation, it makes me sick. These politicians make me sick. The people are going to suffer in this country as a result of this, and already are, in public schools, in healthcare costs, infrastructure costs, and depressed wages in certain sectors. Christine.
Hi, Laura. I'm actually in Tucson, Arizona,
Okay.
and I see exactly what you say. It's hurt our school systems. It's hurting our education. I mean, the University of Arizona right now is in the news, where we have university students calling the Border Patrol law enforcement agents who show up for a class on talking about jobs, and they're calling them KKK and Murder Patrol, and there's no respect for law enforcement. There's no respect for law.
Oh, my God.
And that's scary.
No, they fix because if you're wearing a blue uniform, you're a racist. But why are you incarcerating all these people who look different from you? There's no sense of maybe people have committed crimes. Maybe because we have the rule of law. Oh, no, the rule of law is racist. But do you see the level of stupidity, the level of sheer ignorance on the part of so many people? They don't see that when all is said and done, the country at the end of this open border situation will be less prosperous, less peaceful, with a lot of resentment, built up resentment. And I'm talking resentment of all people who feel like, wait a second. I didn't get this. Wait a second. You're calling me a racist? You call my ancestors racist. They never did anything to you. And don't call me people are sick of this racism thing. This is why Trump got elected. They're sick of the false charges, the PC culture, and this intimidation. I call them the intimidation squads who roam about the country finding offense everywhere. You know something? The world doesn't rise or fall on whether you're offended. Okay? We don't really care if you're offended. If you're offended, turn it off. If you're offended, turn your, Christians are told this all day long. Oh, you're offended by a billboard? There's a girl who's maybe 12 who's dressed up to look 22 with a low-cut dress and thigh-high boots. You're offended, Christian from Arkansas coming to New York? Look away. Oh, you're offended? Look, oh, you're offended by my language on the public street? People using the F-bomb in front of kids, you're offended? Too bad. So certain people just can't ever be offended. But everybody else, if you're a member of an accepted, protected, aggrieved class of people, and you claim offense, then the world is supposed to bow down at your feet, and whatever you say, we have to believe you. You think that's going to be a good world to grow up in? You think that's going to be a peaceful country? It's not going to be a peaceful country. It's going to be a tumultuous, angry, resentful culture. Any of you feel that you don't have the energy you used to have? That you feel like you're missing that strength that you loved maybe some years ago? And it's because you have a decline in your human growth hormone production. It happens as you age. And in your 20s, even in your late 30s, it starts to decline. And there's a new scientific breakthrough. It's called Serovital Advanced, and it delivers all the benefits of the original formula plus accelerated skin improvements. And many people find help with weight loss in as little as 15 days. And not only that, the users of Serovital Advance experience more energy. They feel like their mood is better. They sleep better. And many report reduced cravings, which, that's when you eat the worst stuff. And you're like, oh, I'll just have a bag of chips. You always feel bad afterward. So all this and no added hormones or harmful chemicals into your body. So listeners to the Laura Ingraham podcast can try Serovital Advanced for $70 off by texting Laura to 246810. So you text LAURA to 246810, and you start looking and feeling decades younger. So you order today, you'll even get free shipping. And of course, it's LAURA. Try Serovital Advance by texting Laura to 246810 and enjoy your $70 discount now. Terms and conditions apply.
Legislative relief, changes in the law, and closing the vulnerabilities in our legal framework is the only way that this flow is going to be reduced and we're going to be able to restore integrity to our immigration system. Right now, we are not able to even reach the claims of legitimate asylum seekers. Our courts tell us that 10 to 15% of Central American migrants have a legitimate asylum claim at the end of the process. Those people won't even see a judge now for 2 to 5 years or more to have that asylum claim adjudicated. Because this economic migration, which it primarily is overwhelming that legitimate asylum population.
That is the new acting director of the Department of Homeland Security, Secretary of Homeland Security, after Kristen Nielsen she's fired. Kevin McAllernan is fantastic. Very sober. He's a professional, and this is his focus. He's not a political actor. He's just the facts, ma'am, which is what we need. Art Del Cueto is with us, Vice President of the Border Patrol Union, co-host of the Green Line podcast. Art, I'm telling you, this media drumbeat about everything but the issues, the real issues, is sickening. Now they're like, well, Trump is purging entire departments. They keep using the word purge like he's Joseph Stalin. Art, your thoughts on the change up at DHS?
Laura, first and foremost, thank you for having me on.
You're welcome.
Change is sometimes needed. Maybe you should put in and be the Secretary of Homeland Security.
No more Mr. Nice Guy or Ms. Nice Guy.
It'd be refreshing. Sometimes this is what I see a lot of people say, well, there's turmoil. This person's leaving, that person's coming. Why so much changes? Isn't that what we want? Isn't that what America's about? Don't we want people that want to do the job and that they do the job correctly? And I think we need to be happy with our president because he's able to do that. In the past, we've seen people get put in leadership positions, and even if they're not doing a good job, they just leave them there. And then that department's forgotten, and they just say, well, so-and-so's in charge of it. Let's just leave it that way. So I think it's very important, especially now when we are seeing a crisis, and that is exactly what it is. I am very grateful to news outlets like yourself through the podcast, obviously through your show, that you bring the real news to people. And I know that's kind of sounds cliche because everyone says, oh, well, real news. But it is real news, and that's something that people need to understand. And it just upsets me to no end. I was listening to your prior segment, and it upsets me to no end where people bring up the race card.
Oh, God.
That's just very upsetting. You talked about very good issues about these individuals that are coming into the country and the language barriers. So when you're out there working for the Border Patrol, you learn the Spanish language so you can communicate with a lot of these individuals that you are arresting, a lot of these individuals that are in need of help out on the border. But some of these individuals that we are seeing from, Central America or from lower Mexican states like Chiapas, they do not speak Spanish at all. They have dialects, so they have different dialects that they speak, and it's very hard to communicate with those.
Yeah, that's not going to cost the U.S. taxpayer anything. That's all going to be free. It's all free. Nobody's paying the bills for the dialect interpreters. Jeez, you got to be.
Well, I don't
me.
think you can find some of them. That's where I sit here and I wonder, where are these people coming to get a job? Because they don't really speak any type of language that anyone would understand.
Oh, let's get a job. They work for some rich person who wants to get a ditch dug or a, fertilized lawn, and they put on their headphones and they get paid cash under the table. And meanwhile, we have entire, American workforce who used to do these jobs, not able to work, not able to compete.
And most of that money doesn't stay here. People need to understand, because people say, oh, well, they pay taxes when they buy groceries. Well, yeah, thank you, Captain Obvious. But, the majority of this, the money, they send it back to their home country. So you have this money just leaving the United States. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. Listen, this is what we need. Obviously, there's issues with our asylum laws. If these people are leaving Central America because they were oppressed in their country and they come through Mexico and they're staying in Mexico, I don't see what reasoning they have for not being able to wait their court date in Mexico. That is where the problem is. We have so many individuals that are rushing our borders, and at this point, even if you close the border down, people need to understand. You close the port of entries, what's still going to happen is you're going to have these individuals, once they touch American soil and they ask and they claim asylum, they're going to go see an asylum officer. The asylum officer will not make a decision on their case, which that's also poorly of them, and pawns them off to an immigration judge where
years
a lot of
later
their cases are not seen for years.
Yeah, and they never show up, and it's just a nightmare.
And they never show up. But this is what's important that people need to understand. So these individuals that are free to roam in the United States, and they have a paper saying they're waiting on the immigration court date or to speak to a judge, in the meantime that they're living here, they're able to get benefits in the United States.
Yeah, and they have kids, and then they have an anchor baby, and they'll never deport it.
And that's where I think the big issue is. I heard the lady that was on earlier that's from Arizona, and she mentioned the University of Arizona. I was the speaker at the University of Arizona where we had all those protesters. And I'm Hispanic, and they were holding up signs calling me a sellout, calling me a murderer, and calling me the extension of the KKK.
I'm looking at these photos. It's a great looking group here. These protesters. Oh my God! They're like, do they go to a place where it's just protesters are us and they get all the same clothing? Like, do they go and they just? It's like a uniform. Okay, the girls have to look a certain way. The boys have to look a certain way. And again, bathing occasionally would be nice if they decided to take a shave every now and then.
Laura, I get in trouble for that all the time. I call it the patchouli oil wearing crowd. I understand their protest, but why do you protest bathing?
Oh no! It's just it can't protest bathing. It's just these aren't the kids who are going to be making a difference and. Right. Starting companies or innovating. So these are going to be the perpetual malcontents of American society. This is what mommy and daddy spent all this money on their tuition, and they're graduating perpetual malcontents.
Laura, this is what's amazing. I went and spoke there, and obviously they were upset. There was agents that spoke there previously a couple weeks ago. This is what started this whole thing. And when they were speaking there at the university, they were invited to speak in a criminal justice course. All of a sudden, one of these protesters shows up, started yelling murder patrol, started yelling KKK, started yelling obscenities in the Spanish language. And I'm telling you, these were seriously vulgar words that they were yelling at the agents. They followed them down the hall all the way to their vehicle, continued yelling at them while they were driving away. So later on, I was on the radio upset over it and saying that these individuals need to face some type of action for this. And they released a letter saying that they would appreciate for any law enforcement when they go to their school to inform them first so they can have the opportunity to send out a letter to DACA students and illegal aliens that go to the school. Now, if they would take the time to understand the law or actually ask questions, they would realize that DACA is considered a protective class. Now, whether I agree with it or not, it's a protective class, and I cannot deport those people. So first and foremost, the DACA people don't have anything to worry about. But that's the letter they sent out. And then I said jokingly on a radio show, hey, if you're that worried, give me the address of the illegal aliens. I'll make sure I'll inform them when Border Patrol agents show up at your school. It was a joke. They took it as a threat, and now they've turned it around and said that I have terrorized and threatened these students. Some of them are suffering severe trauma from those words that I said.
Oh, are they? Poor babies. Oh, I'm sure they didn't. I'm sure they limited themselves to, 4 margaritas on a Saturday night. Oh, come on.
And that's crazy, Laura, because I'm saying these people attacked these agents. They named, they cussed and, vulgarities. But all of a sudden, my comments offended you? I mean, it's surreal. And I think that's one of the problems that we're facing a lot in a lot of communities is, look, I work for the agency and I work the field, and I see what these men and women do out there. And I see that some of these individuals need help. And I believe in the immigration system. I'm not anti-immigration. I'm pro-immigration. But it needs to be done legally. And I see these individuals that come across, and some of them may have real asylum claims. But unfortunately, the lawbreakers and the individuals that are ruining our immigration system and that are coming across with children, many times children that are not their own, but they're claiming to say they're the guardian or the parent, are ruining the system and backlogging everything for those individuals that truly need help. So those individuals, they are the bad guy. And a lot of these individuals do have past criminal history, like child molestation, like rape, like drug smuggling. That's who is coming across the border. Now, I'm not saying 100% of them are like that, but the reality is if you come to your home, my home, and I don't care if you're sitting on the right side of the aisle or the left side of the aisle, I think we all need to agree, regardless of our political lineage or where we want to stand on the line, the reality is if I come to your home, you want me to knock on that door so you can open it.
The border has to be closed.
If you want me in.
Yeah, the border has to be closed. I mean, I'm sorry, the border has to be closed. You have to close the border until you get this in order. I mean, you keep the, keep 1 or 2 points of entry open for, critical produce and critical trade, but the border has to be closed. Got to close this border. This is it's just a joke.
Mexico has to take responsibilities, though.
I'd stop all. You know what I would do if I were Trump? If I were Trump today, I would say all remittances ended. No remittances are going back to Central America or Mexico until. Have I gotten your attention yet? Guess what? Remittances are closed.
Exactly. Well, I'm not.
I'd shut it all down.
With you, I can tell you that.
I've been saying this for years. Shut the remittances down. And guess what we're doing? We're going to put your remittances, any remittances that are in process, we're going to put them in a trust fund for the border. And that border is going to be paid for by all the money that we've seized from the drug cartels. I said this during the campaign. During the Trump campaign, I said the drug cartel seized assets should all be in a border fund. They should all be used to build the wall and then have more Border Patrol agents and start turning people back at the border. It's a national emergency. Extraordinary measures are going to be taken. No one's interested in sitting down and solving this. I'm going to do everything I can. And a judge rules against the president, take it in an expedited fashion up to all the way to the Supreme Court. Just got to do it. Mm-hmm. It's done. We're done with this. By the way, Eric Swalwell, we're going to play this and we'll let you go. Eric Swalwell, who is a congressman, speaking of malcontent, know nothing. He hung his hat on Bob Mueller. That went down in flames. And now he thinks he can be president of the United States.
This is someone who separated moms from babies, put babies in cages. Some of the kids died on her watch. And she's not cruel enough for this president. So I don't want to, let the person who put these policies in place off the hook. Donald Trump is malicious, but he's incompetent. So the only way he becomes effective is if people are willing to carry out his orders. We just need to make sure the next person is not willing to carry out an unlawful order.
Your reaction Kirstjen Nielsen was just not cruel enough. So Donald Trump is a bad person. They're back to that argument.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know how to address these people anymore. And I think that's what it is. When you don't have an argument no more, you bring up, you're not cruel, the race factor. Listen, We have thousands upon thousands of people that are entering our country right now. I truly believe that the majority of their claims to asylum are false. We have more agents being attacked than before. We have, last fiscal year, we seized enough fentanyl to kill the entire population of the United States. Drugs are entering our country. We don't have the facilities to hold these people. Agents are being removed from positions where they're guarding the line in order to take care of a lot of these issues and pretty much babysitting duties at times, thus leaving areas more open for drug dealers to bring their garbage into our country. This is a crisis, and people need to wake up. And it's
even Jake Tapper,
yeah,
even Jake Tapper had to finally sent out a series of tweets about how the Rio Grande sector is completely overwhelmed. I mean, the same amount of people I think who came in the entire year have now already come into the country in this year. The figures are staggering. Entire American towns, populations are being replicated. Small cities are being replicated. This year we'll have waved in 1.5 million illegal immigrants into the country who claim, and 90% of the cases, bogusly, that they're asylees. So our hearts and our thoughts are with the Border Patrol agents who are, in many times they have a thankless job, only to be demeaned on college campuses, only to be called names in American media outlets. And Art, you represent some really good men and women who are just trying to, again, they're trying to pick up the pieces for a failed Congress. That's what they're trying to do, and it's unfair to them. And we really appreciate your voice and continuing to speak out. And I'm glad you went to that college because you exposed the waste of a tuition on these people, complete waste of tuition dollars. So we really appreciate it.
Laura, many times those protests have been led by school officials themselves. Thank you for having me on. And Laura, I just want to say something. We're tired. Yeah. We need help. I don't know how else to put it.
Well,
I understand there's other countries that need help. I understand there's individuals that are fleeing because of their economy. But, we have certain rules. We're a nation of rules. We're a nation of laws. Those laws need to be followed or else we won't have a country. It's that simple. And, that's as much as I can say right now because, to be honest,
the country's disappearing.
We have a president that cares.
Yeah, the country's
but
disappearing.
We need everyone else up there in D.C. to start caring.
Art Del Cueto, we really appreciate it from, of course, the Border Patrol Union. And a lot of folks out there are getting ready for summer. You want to look your best. Maybe you're lucky enough to go on vacation. And, you work your tail off day in and day out. Sometimes you work so hard you don't take care of yourself, and you got to take good care of yourself. You only got one, mind. You only have one body. You only have one, your skin. Skin needs the right kind of care. And when I recommend Genucel, it's just because I use Genucel. And I love the products. I love the pure antioxidant base. I love the no parabens, no chemical scents, no pharmaceutical preservatives. Clean luxury for your skin. And if you want to try the fantastic jawline treatment, well, you have a good opportunity to do so now because you can get it for free to see if you like it. I know you're going to like it, but see if you like it. You get it for free by just replenishing or for the first time getting your under eye bags and puffiness cream, which is kind of it's a gel, really. It's not cream, but it's a gel. And I use it in the morning after I do facial cleanser, and then I use it in the evening after I get all the makeup off from TV. It's just awesome product. So you need that anyway, so try that. The under eye bags and puffiness gel, and then you'll get the jawline treatment free, and your satisfaction's guaranteed. It's very easy. And all you need to do is text EYES1, EYES 1, to 77453, or go to Genucel.com. So Genucel.com, GENUCEL.com. And Chamonix, they have their 100% money-back guarantee. So just have the bad skin to lose. Order now, you get the free day. I keep saying free day. 3-day shipping, also free. You don't have to pay for shipping. Why bother with that? So you get good deal here. Text EYES1 to 77453 or go to genucell.com. Stephanie in one of my favorite states ever, Alabama. Steph.
Hey, Laura. How are you?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks.
So I think about this immigration issue often, and two of the areas that I think that will help, obviously it's not going to fix everything, but the H-2A visas and Title III funding for the schools. So I'll hit the H-2A visas first. Right now, farmers are required to give free transportation and housing to any H-2A visa workers that they hire. And that cost is it's too burdensome on the farmers. That's why it's easier and cheaper just to hire illegal workers, because they don't want to go through the process. Their housing has to be inspected. They have to follow certain guidelines. So I think the first thing is to drop that requirement for H-2A visa workers. They're on their own for finding housing. If they want to come work in this country, they do it themselves. Then the second prong of that, the transportation, if we could come up with some type of privatized government hybrid to transport these people in and out of the country, one, we eliminate the coyotes and the humanitarian crisis of them walking, basically. And then we know who's coming in and who's coming out with these visas. So we know you were here for 6 months. You didn't show up for your departure date. You are now in the country illegally, and you are no longer eligible for an H-2A visa. So I think we increase the number of visas that we allow for this. For farming, I also think we should expand it to construction and landscaping.
No way.
Expand the number.
No way. Not going to do. I mean, I hear where you're going with this, but you're basically just saying import a new workforce. And I think that's terrible for the country. I think we've basically done that in a way. American families supported families for decades and decades and decades in construction. The idea that only certain people now can be in construction is ridiculous. I'm completely against that. I'm 100% against that. I think we want to keep the labor markets tight in the United States. That means if you have fewer people who are available to work, wages will start going up. And they already are going up. But you flood the zone, 150,000 here, 200,000 workers there. Then all of a sudden what happens? Guess what? Birthright citizenship. They have a kid here. They get to stay. And I would imagine most of them do. So you're a father. You've got some girl pregnant, or you maybe get married. Baby's here. What are you going to deport dad? So then he gets to stay. Whole family gets to stay. And it's a chain of family migration. Extended relatives then come in, et cetera, et cetera. So it sounds like our caller is from the agricultural industry, if she's still on the line. Are you still on the line? Yes, we dropped. But, I get it. I understand it. The only way that system would work is if it's extremely limited. And maybe in agriculture, that's the one area where it's fine. But then there's no birthright citizenship. You have kids here. Kids have to go back to but that would require a lot more. Well, here's what we know. I'm just looking back, to the caller we just had on the visas. In 2016, the number of farm guest worker visas, 165,741. This program has expanded rapidly over the years. Just from 2015 to 2016, a 14% increase in guest farm workers. 160% increase since 2006, and that's not enough? Now you want more? That's amazing. 7% of the crop workforce that H-2A workers represent. So they only represent 7%, supposedly. So that means they have Americans doing these jobs. A lot of it's going to be automation anyway. The H-2A visa program allows farmers anticipating shortages of U.S. seasonal workers to be certified by the Department of Labor to recruit and employ foreign workers with temporary non-immigrant visas. That's amazing. The H-2A program in 2016 is 2.5 times larger than it was just a decade ago in 2006, when 64,000 jobs were certified. You see what's happened? Business is really unscrupulous, though. They just want to keep driving wages down. Well, it's expensive to actually have places for these people to live. Well, yeah. You get a special benefit. You get paying them not much money to do really hard work. Oh, but then blueberries would be $4 a container instead of $2.99. Well, that's a cost. It's called the free market. It's called caring about your country and our workers before you care about your bottom line every time. Our country. We need to be a country. But boy, that's a staggering fact you probably didn't know. Skyrocketing number of guest farm worker visas. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham podcast. So glad you were with us. Thank all of our sponsors again who supported this show. Genucel, Delta Animal Rescue, Sero Vital, Legacy Box, and Brush Hero. And we want to thank all of them. You guys are awesome. All right, we'll see you next time. Remember, America now and forever. The Laura Ingraham podcast.